Anambra.
The suspended Deputy Speaker, Amara Iwayawu, and 18 other lawmakers impeached the Speaker, Paul Emeziem, and elected Kennedy Abe as the new Speaker of Imo State House of Assembly.
And also the former chairman of the defunct Pensions Reform Task Team, Abdul-Rashid Maina, has been convicted and sentenced to 8 years in prison for laundering about 100.
We're glad to have you join us on a beautiful Tuesday morning.
And I am Osaugi Obon, looking like it's a good night rest. Welcome to a new day for the people in Anambra State. The elections continue. It's not over yet. We would have expected that we would be talking about a new governor of Anambra by, at least or at most yesterday morning, Monday. But seeing the way things have played out, the elections were scheduled for Saturday, eventually have continued all the way till tomorrow, or today rather, where there's going to be that, need further elections. I hope that we don't continue Anambra elections all the way to the end of November.
Hopefully that doesn't happen.
Just to elect one governor. I hope that it doesn't continue because that's we eventually got to election day and they still had these issues. So we hope we'll be bringing you further details as the day goes by, and it's one of the things that we'll be talking about this morning also in our discussions on the program. But let's first of all start with our top trending stories. Abdul-Rashid Maina, you must know that name, from the Pension Reform Tax Team. He has been accused, or he was accused of, stealing or, misappropriating billions of naira. Yesterday, of course, the court in Abuja eventually sentenced him to 8 years imprisonment for one of the charges. I think it's a combination of almost about 20 years that are meant to run concurrently.
21 years.
Yes, that are meant to run concurrently. And of course, some people have said this is once again another victory in the fight against corruption. Sadly, there's also those who have complained about how long this has taken, because this court case has been running for years now. That there's a time when he also absconded and left the country, and then he was rearrested someplace and brought back. His son also is also in custody and of course also faces charges. So we'll see how this turns out. There was a little bit of drama yesterday with the DSS and the prison officials arguing about who takes control or takes custody of Abdul-Rashid Maina after he was sentenced to 8 years in prison.
Well, for me, I'll definitely tilt to those who are very concerned about how far this process has actually taken now. If you want to, and he actually asked for an apology from the National Assembly and the country, saying, oh, it was just all of that drama. He was falsely accused. And in 2019 as well, there were also stories saying that his posters were also out, vying for governorship candidates and all of that. And at some point also, he was recalled back to the civil service. I mean, for me, that has been very dramatic. And, the Attorney General of the Federation at the time confirmed that, yes, he was back. And, he was not only back, but he was promoted. And then he was earning salaries. So it's one dramatic corruption case. And let's not forget that prior to this time, a lot of persons were really concerned because this current administration led by President Muhammadu Buhari is out for, the fight against corruption. And some persons thought that, with the civil service in the drama, it's really going to be very dramatic. So it is one case that has actually, been back and forth. Now, let's even stay with the part that he was recalled back to service. How do you recall someone who's been declared wanted by the EFCC? At some point, he said he's been cleared. So how do we explain all of that at this point in time now? And to the fact that he started vying for, whether he vied or maybe you had people pushing his interests, it doesn't really make sense. So that's number one. And for me, you also have some other school of thought saying 8 years after all that's been done, we're looking at approximately 2 billion naira. And you want to juxtapose that with all of the pains that those who are in the civil service have actually gone through. I mean, the suffering, the agony, the pain, and some persons would have probably lost their lives. Is 8 years, that judgment, is it enough? Will this judgment actually help in the fight against corruption? Because this is some of the argument. Don't you think we're sending, a signal out there to say, okay, it's okay, you just say you probably do 8 years, which has already been counting according to it. So he's already done 2 years already, and then he probably has, 6 years.
Well, I mean, I would agree. I would, understand, those sentiments, mostly because, but it's very dependent on what the law says. you're not going to give a person, 200 years if the law says, that the person gets 5 years.
But is it
a good defense team, they somehow, somewhere able to get you, favorable time. Best case scenarios. But there are other times when the justice system actually does go ahead and give you a time that is very, very, very suitable for the crime that you've committed on. And if the prosecution team is able to prove their case beyond reasonable doubt, because that's what Justice Abang is saying here, that the EFCC has been able to prove their case beyond reasonable doubt. But I would agree, with anyone whose sentiments say that they don't think that 8 years would really be enough time to be spent in jail for someone who stole, has been accused and found guilty of stealing billions of naira that were meant to be, money for pensions for, for Nigerian workers.
He should refund it.
Well,
because
I mean, the law you still have. If you don't have,
no, you have to refund it. That's it. That sentence. I don't care. You have to refund.
But that's the idea behind jail. Because if you can refund it, then they may not need to send you to jail.
No, you have to refund it and do the time.
But not every time, that those funds are still available to for a person to refund. And I've never really agreed with the idea of a plea bargain. Because it came into, I think it was during Obasanjo's time, I believe that the whole idea of plea bargain came into Nigeria's, system, where someone would be accused of stealing billions and billions of naira and buying properties across the country and across the world. And then when they are eventually caught, and during their court case, then there's something about plea bargain where they give back some of the money that they stole, which a lot of times is really just a fraction of the money that they stole. They let go of some of the houses that they bought, and eventually they walk. And we've seen a couple of those cases which I felt were very, 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 very bad example of the fight against corruption. I would also mention, and I've said this before, that when we see cases like this, yes, Abdul Rashid Maina is the one whose name has been called multiple times. But I think it's also important that, we do not let our system fail us, or we fix the system to a stage where we get to punish other people who were facilitators to this crime. Because he didn't walk into any bank and gather all these funds and put them in his Ghana must go and run away. He didn't take 2 billion naira from any suitcase or from any vault. These crimes were facilitated by people in the civil service also that worked under him, that worked in the same office with him, that signed off on certain payments, that signed off on certain transfers to certain bank accounts and on all that. And so he should not be the only one who's fingered here. There's many, I believe there's a couple of other people who were also, facilitators to this crime that should be arrested. And it's the same thing with governors, with deputy governors, with speakers, with House of Assembly members, whoever it is. When you hear that a governor misappropriated 7 billion naira, in Abia State or whatnot, he did not, by himself walk into the state coffers and pack all that money.
It also brings us to, another point that's been raised, that he probably might just be taking the fall for a lot of persons because, like you have mentioned, he wouldn't have actually acted, all by himself. Now, another thing that stood out for me with that court judgment is the fact that, according to, what the court actually held, it's not possible, being a civil servant, it's not possible to have all of that, looking at his earnings, his salaries and everything all together. All of these funds found in the accounts, 300 billion, 1.5 billion and all of that, it's not possible that he should earn all of that. So I think that this is just one out of so many cases. There's a lot of corruption that's ongoing in the civil service, and I'm thinking that, that we need to pay attention. But however, some people would say is, better late than none or never, and it's better that we have a judgment than not have a judgment.
Absolutely.
Because I felt
justice denied. We'll see how this also turns out. And I personally don't. We've not really won the fight against corruption. Neither, in my personal opinion, are we winning in any way. This is just one case. Anyway, moving away from Abdul Rashid May, now we move over to the fight against insecurity, where a sergeant in the army, his name Solomon Tosobo, has been arrested. A sergeant in the Nigerian Air Force has been arrested and been charged, as being a party to that crime. I think we have clips. I don't know if we have clips or pictures to quickly share with you of that person. Which, for me, this is something that I'm happy about personally, because of the fact that we've every now and then mentioned that the fight against insecurity also has to include the possibility that they are insiders, and there are people who work in the Nigerian Army and the Nigerian Air Force that are insiders, and give out information to these terrorists, assist these terror groups with arms and ammunition and whatnot. Yes, that's the picture of him. His name is Tosobo Solomon, Sergeant Tosobo Solomon, and he has been, of course, arrested over the NDA attack.
Yeah, but you also have the fact that the Air Force is also saying, yeah, we did not arrest the officer over, the NDA attack. That's actually, latest development. So it leaves us at this point where we're wondering whose report should we believe.
Yeah.
Now, some concerns have also been raised. As much as one would say, yes, you can't really have all of this kind of attack happening without an insider giving all of the information. So there would be some collaboration. Now, it's really, really worrisome. This is actually a force. Let's even assume that that's something to go by. Okay, isn't it really scary that those who should protect us and look out for us are the ones giving out the attack? But I feel like there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the entire system. We need to begin to look at the recruitment process and all of that. We don't just have to have everyone come in. We have to have a process that would be able to screen thoroughly. I'm sure that we might not have 100%. We're not expecting to have 100% process, but whatever. However, I meant to say it's important that we pay attention to the recruitment process and all of that. But if this is something to go by, it's really, really worrisome. And to also mention some of the concerns of Nigeria, they're saying you can't trust this government. Anything that comes sort of, and so where do we stand at this point in time when you say you can't trust anything that comes out of this government's mouth? Because every time they say a thing, even if a policy is about to be implemented or a policy is being stated, people begin to question what government is about to do. So, but fingers crossed, we hope that due investigation will be done, proper investigation, so we get to the end of this.
I would also mention that the Air Force has also, debunked the arrest, so there's a little bit of controversy or confusion concerning this story over the arrest of this officer. The Nigerian Air Force has debunked if he truly has been arrested, or it is the details concerning the reason for his arrest, that are a little bit speaker. And this is in reaction to an impeachment of the deputy speaker that happened sometime in July. It's a messy situation in the Imo State House of Assembly. It's one of the things that we'll be talking about this morning. But before we get there, Off the Press comes up next, where we have a quick review of the stories making headlines across Nigeria this morning. And we'll be joined by our guest, Mr. Chris Wandu, this morning on The Breakfast. Stay with us.
Hello and welcome. It's Nimasa This Week, the voice of maritime. Nimasa This Week is brought to you by the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency. Statutorily mandated to ensure that there is regulation and promotion of matters affecting our water.
Welcome back to The Breakfast, and thanks for joining us for Author Press on PlusTvAfrica. We'll take you through the pages of the national dailies and bring you up to speed with what's making the rounds across the board. We have Chris Nwandu, who's joining us, who will join the conversation as we proceed to help us understand some of the headlines this morning. I start off with the Daily Independent newspaper, and let's find out what's on the Daily Independent newspaper this morning. The front or the banner caption says, Federal government moves to probe Jonathan's government over P&ID contract. I'm sure you're familiar with this particular one. Federal government moves to probe Jonathan's government over P&ID contract. Says contract capable of undermining national economy. All of that on the front page of the Daily Independent. Away from that, Parry Club refund. Governors accuse Attorney General of the Federation of siding consultant against Nigeria. That's also another bold caption on the Daily Independent newspaper. Current security challenge, threat to food security. Defense Minister is quoted. You also have Anambra Guber, INEC adjusts supplementary election timetable for Ihiala. It is not yet over, says Ozigbo, PDP candidate. That's Valentine Ozigbo. That's on page 6 of the Daily Independent newspaper. All right, so you also have another caption here saying, NMPC assures on availability of petrol, cautions against panic buying. Imo Assembly impeaches speaker, swears in Kennedy eBay as replacement, and court jails ex-pension boss Abdurrashid Minor for 8 years. Plot to extend APC caretaker committee tenure thickens. Convention may not hold in December. That's some of the concerns, of the APC ahead of 2023 elections. You also have IPOP Road Street Market still deserted in Imo State. That's it on the Daily Independent newspaper this morning.
All right, to the Punch newspapers. Big one there says, governors attack Malami over $418 million consultants fee. Say the AGF lied. Haste suggests a special relationship between AGF's office and consultants, says the NGF. And also state resources needed for critical development should not be frittered away. Air Force officer arrested over deadly attack on NDA. And in an update, it says the Air Force is denying that he has been arrested or that he is in their custody. And also APC elders lampoon Lai Mohammed over attack on Abdul Razak. Ikoyi collapse building, subscribers signed over $500,000 contract each. And also a 40-year-old Ogumbucha arrested over lover's death after sex. Kwara barred from UBEC fund over 1 billion naira looting by ex-government, says governor. A few others on the Punch newspapers this morning. We can find their uncertainty hangs over new PDP leadership as Secondus approaches Supreme Court. Cooking gas price jumps by 240%. Marketers halt imports. And Lagos tops as state's half-year IGR reaches 849.12 billion naira. We can also find here 2.3 billion naira theft. EFCC customs clash on custody as Maina bags 61-year imprisonment. The papers have different years all over them. Nobody's sure exactly how many years he gets. APC, PDP, bank on runoff, OB, and party alleged vote buying and others. And finally on the Punch, I think that's all we can take on the Punch this morning.
All right, let's check out the Leadership newspaper this morning. Watching says Ohaneze, civil society calls for transparency, INEC adjusts voting timeline. ECOWAS imposes sanction on Mali. Court jails minor 8 years for pension fraud. And you also have 418 million Parry Club deduction illegal. Governors reply, Attorney General of the Federation. And that's it this morning. But just before we move away from the leadership, stakeholders recommend urgent overhaul of power sector. And 6 Imo's lawmakers impeach Speaker. Some of the headlines on the Leadership newspaper this morning.
And now to the Daily Trust newspapers. Pensioners cheer as Maina bags 61 years imprisonment. Act sordid, immoral, and dirty, says the judge. lampoons banks for aiding and abetting, and others convicts to refund 2.4 billion naira and forfeit 2 houses. Petrol price, Nimasa, NPA flouting presidential directives, say marketers. IGR, Lagos leads as FCT beats Rivers, Kano and 33 others. Also, federal government and governors in fresh battle over 172 billion naira Paris Club deductions. Supplementary poll, Soludo, Ozigbo battle for Ihiala today. Nigeria's IDPs figure to hit 3 million, says the federal government. Those are the stories on the Daily Trust. Good morning to Mr. Chris Wandu, the publisher of CKN News. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me this morning.
All right. I'm sure you're excited to talk of the Anambra elections and see how, basically react to how things have turned out. Supplementary elections from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. today. Valentino's.
The streets of Anambra will be littered with human corpses and rest of them due to the high level of insecurity in Anambra State. That election was very, very successful. There was no single shot heard in any part of Anambra State. And the people of Anambra State came out to exercise their franchise as it were. And we have it now. And by the end of today, or first thing tomorrow morning, the final result will be announced and the winner will emerge. That is kudos to, I give it to the people, Anambarians, for doing the needful, despite the fact that just as we predicted, there was going to be voters' apathy. If you see what is coming out of the various local government and the numbers, it wasn't high enough. At some point, less than 30% voters turnout as against registered voters. So, but it was expected because people seem to value their life more than going out to vote, despite the last-minute announcement by IPOD that they are not going to disrupt the election and the rest of them. But you will see that security played a huge role in that election, and that at the end of it, so whoever emerges, whether we can say that she truly represents the totality of the people, votes of the people of Anambra State is neither here nor there. But definitely, the most important thing for me is that that election was conducted against all odds. The winner is going to emerge. And as it's looking that it's going to be the candidate of ABGA. Seems to be cruising home by the last that he can still win. I don't know how he's going to do that. Yes, we have close to about 140-something thousand registered voters in Ihiala local government. I think it's about in Ihiala today. But the two dominant parties in Nigeria, which seem to be taking Nigerians for granted. So if we have a choice between these smaller parties and the rest of them, there's a possibility that Nigerians can have alternative from 2023.
Well, I mean, that narrative would fly if ABGA wasn't the dominant party in Anambra for a long time. Then you can say Nigerians, or the Anambrarians, as they are called, have decided to move away from the two dominant parties. But ABGA has been the dominant party
for 16 years.
For 16 years in Anambra. So it doesn't seem like they're moving away from anything. They are basically, picking a party that they trust.
Before ABGA, there was PDP in Anambra State.
Yes,
the various elections were won by PDP before ABGA, and that's what I'm saying. So before ABGA came, from 1999, it was PDP, and ABGA came when Chokwa Sokore, I think that's his name, and it has always been like that. And that's what I'm saying in essence is, if you continue to go through that narrative, you realize. Let me also remind you that I think as of 2003 or thereabout, there was a dominant party in the southeast. It wasn't even ABGA. There was a party known as PPA. That party was founded by former Governor Oji Uzokalo of Abia State. That was this party, PPA. And PPA had two states in his road. I think it was Imo and Abia at a point. So that party was also growing up in leaps and bounds and was almost becoming a dominant party in the southeast before all just filter away the goodwill and the rest of them. As I'm moving from one party to another and the rest of them, today it's not nationally as relevant as it ought to be. So what I'm saying in essence is that we can just continue to look at most of this little party Look at in Anambra election, YPP won a local government. That is Ifayoba. He won a local government. APC didn't even win a single local government. If you can build up, if you could just come within a few months from nowhere and build up YPP to win a local government, then that tells you the story that we can still get it right if we decide to do the right thing.
Right. But we cannot. Some people would target the Igbo party.
If you listen to my statement initially, I mentioned that the turning point was when Odumegwu Ojukwu came into the fray. I said that Chekwas Okorie was the founder of that party, and they had issues. I think they had issues with some of the members of that. Even Chekwas went ahead to form another political party of his own. I can't remember the name of that party. But Odumegwu Ojukwu, before Odumegwu Ojukwu joined APGA or was part of APGA, he was also a member of one of the political. I don't know whether it was PDP or I don't know whichever, one of those dominant parties. Don't forget he contested as a senator in one of those parties as well. So what I'm saying in essence is that yes, APGA have been to resonate with the people of Anambra State. They've seen it part of their own. The surprising part of it was that I was expecting the other political parties to do very, especially PDP and APC. But when I saw the result that came in, I was shocked that a party like PDP that have so many strong people behind it, it could just couldn't even muster enough that even APGA was winning in the local government of the candidates of the parties, of those most of those parties and the rest of it. So, but it's a good day for people of Anambra State. As we said, the election has come and a winner will definitely come out within the next 48 hours. And anybody that's aggrieved by the outcome of the party has the right to go to tribunals and also to the court to challenge the outcome.
Okay, but let's still stay with the leadership newspaper now. I know you have actually mentioned that, but do you see a possibility of that magic that would happen? I know here we're looking at 148,000 voters, and it is not expected.
In Anambra State, you can take that to the bank.
What about the emo magic?
Oh, the emo magic is the court. So the emo magic is in the court. The election was declared, the result was declared that the emo we obtained, quote unquote, the Supreme Court judgment that upheld the candidate, the person of Emeka Ihedioha, inconclusive election. And I just feel that inconclusive is just a way of giving a breather and giving some people advantage. Best one each of the other parties. I don't know where they were. And I've told you that, yes, 148 voters registered. But the trajectory from what we have seen is that, you know the number of people. I don't see that huge number of people coming out in Ihiala to vote. So, but let's wait and see. I always say that Nigeria is like a Charlie Boy show. In Charlie Boy show, anything can happen at any given point in time. But not say PDP, APC, or whichever party overturning the victory that APGA seems to be cruising for now.
All right, let's see what we have on the Daily Trust. The big one there says pensioners chair as Mena bags 61 years imprisonment. It says also that the judge lampoons banks and lampoons banks for aiding and abetting, orders the convicts to refund 2.4 billion and forfeit 2 houses. What's your reaction to that?
Yes, it's right. In law, if you look at the judgment, Mena was given 61 years imprisonment. That was the judgment of the court. But that 61 years is to run concurrently. So what it means is that that 61 years has been shrinked into 8 years. So he's going to serve 8 years. But he was sentenced, each of the counts carries the number of years that he was sentenced. So he has been in prison for maybe about 2 years, despite the fact that he has absconded and the rest of that. You might see him just end up spending about 5 years. But it's not the number of years that matters to me. The fact is that he has been convicted of those allegations, bordering on money laundering, embezzlement, fraud, corruption, and the rest of them. These are money of Nigerians, retirees, who went through, who served this country effectively. This man was not even so it was more like an ad hoc consultant, quote unquote, who came in. I believe that I thought that could have gotten a much, much harsher sentence. But if that is what the law says, that is what it is. But The other aspect of it also yesterday was the embarrassment that he should have the right to keep
But
him.
where did the EFCC think they were taking him to then?
Sorry?
Where did the EFCC think they were taking him to?
Well, I don't know. They should know that I was being taken to the prison. Except EFCC want to rearrest him. You know, EFCC, the way they act at times, you can be released by the court, and before you, as I just coming out, you just EFCC will just arrest you. It happens so many times. I'm sure you must have seen that.
Yes.
And probably that's what they wanted to do. Probably they wanted to arrest him. But if you are going to rearrest him, it's not when he's coming out of court. He has been convicted. Send him, let him go to the, where he was sent to. Then you cannot bring fresh charges. If you have any other charges against you, bring fresh charges. And he will be summoned to come back to court to answer for those. So there shouldn't be this kind of discrepancies within the government agencies. It's the same federal government agency. EFCC is federal government agency. Nigerian prison is federal government agency. So there should not be this kind of disparity. Except there is more to read that we don't know about. But the fact is that the guy has been sentenced. Yes, pensioners were clapped. What happened to the officials that compromised their ethics and they were able to join in midnight, or are they not aware of what was doing? They also be arrested, and those bank officers should also be in prison. They should go to prison so that the answer is deterrent for those who also want to engage in this kind of unwholesome activities. That is my own take on that.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, let's check out the daily.
I have not been able to verify that independently. That's 1 billion, is it 1 billion? Pleaded guilty to that allegations, and I don't know whether he was sentenced or not. And also that I know there's a pending clause in the United Kingdom court on this issue. I don't know whether that has been disposed of again. So, but if the federal government find a new angle to the story, a trial, and the government come up with new revelations or what we call evidence, as it were in law, then the government will always have the right to be able to continue. But I think we should quickly, as quickly as possible, make sure that we be able to handle this as quickly as possible, dispose of it and the rest of them, and move on. But if there are, I read the story that the sales contracts capable of undermining national economy. I don't know what they mean by it. There were allegations against Jacob Zuma. And the man was invited and refused.
And the former French president also.
And I think that should be arrested. Sorry?
I said the former French president also.
Yes, former president of South Africa. He was invited, he refused to. The court gave a directive that he should be invited. No, he was not only invited, he was kept in prison. That is how it happens. Nobody is above the constitution of Nigeria. So if they are pushing this narrative of Jonathan, if they find Jonathan culpable in any of those contracts, he should be invited. And Jonathan doesn't have immunity. He is not a former president. He does not have immunity. So he can be invited, he can be prosecuted, he can be jailed. That is how it happens. And that is why the Constitution, the 1999 Constitution, as amended, is the ground norm, as they say in law. So nobody is, irrespective of whatever your position in society, you cannot be above the Constitution of Nigeria. So if there's an issue that they find out in this, he should be invited and then he should be able to testify. But I think we should be able to get this wrapped up. Let us start asking what happened to the NDDC or NDIC probe. It seems that we've gone quiet on that. I know that a report was submitted to the federal government by that probe panel, and until now, a white paper has not been released. It seems that we are sitting on that. Remember the days of off your mic, off your mind. They were practically off the mic. As far as that issue is concerned, the mic has gone silent. So there are so many probe and whatever that we continue to we submit white papers and nothing not get to hear about it. The next thing you see government doing is setting up another committee to look at the report submitted by a committee and committees at the end of it, Africa magic, as it were.
All right. Now, other bits of controversy here and there. On the Punch this morning says governors attack Malami over $418 million consultants fee, say AGF lied. Some other part where he's also mentioned, and that is with regards to the Paris Club deduction, says federal government.
Speculation, because even if you take it to court, you must prove evidence. You have evidence to show what you are, to prove what you are saying. You are saying that AGF is compromising his stance and also siding the contractors on this matter and this payment. Then is a big indictment, and if it could be looked at from whichever angle, like during the MTN saga,
yes,
the multi-billion MTN saga, the AGF was also fingered. You never did that. I don't know how that power he came out to deny. During the course of the problem that former with allegation, what are you saying when they say there's a problem? But as I said, the governors, if they are going this way, they must also bring out enough evidence to prove what they are saying.
But I would like to also ask as a concern, I mean, is there no mechanism that is created to check all of these excesses? I mean, we have seen the fact that there's been several allegations, just like my colleague has mentioned. It feels like every 2 weeks these are issues. Is there no mechanism to check all of this?
The mechanism is the box up on the table of the president, who is the chief executive officer of the Nigerian company, Nigerian PLC, if I put Nigeria as a company. Even if it's not, the vice president might be watching, or the new officers of government will be watching. It is within the government, the president, to be able to say, oh, for goodness sake, what is it? These are the level of this allegation leveled against you. They are all acceptable to the president. There's no other way. The only other way that you can checkmate whatever he's doing, you also have a negative, probably by a politician. And the other one will be occupied by a technocrat, a sound practically become the de facto, the president has the sole responsibility.